Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com. The press is constantly publishing articles like this. Climate change would cause 83 million excess deaths. More than 5 million extra deaths a year can be attributed to abnormal hot and cold temperatures. All this propaganda has the children terrified. More than 70% of children aged 7 to 12 are now afraid of climate change, according to the results of a survey. The Washington Post says global warming is going to destroy the world by the year 2030. The New York Times says it's time to panic about global warming. Alarmism and catastrophic thinking are valuable. But Donald Trump has a different opinion. 10 years ago, he said, the concept of global warming was created by and for the Chinese in order to make U.S. manufacturing non-competitive. Donald Trump was saying something completely different from the Washington Post and New York Times. So which side is correct? This graph from Oxford University shows death rates from all types of natural disasters over the last 120 years. Disasters include all geophysical, meteorological, and climate events. Death rates are down 95% over the last century. In other words, these claims being made by the press simply are not true. Life expectancy around the world has doubled over the past century. Extreme poverty around the world has plummeted over the last century. Over the past 30 years, malnutrition around the world has sharply declined. Illiteracy has sharply declined. According to the Geologic Society of America, Northern Hemisphere snow and ice is decreasing. But the actual data shows the exact opposite. During the fall and winter, snow cover has greatly increased in the Northern Hemisphere. During the months of the year when the snow falls, it's increasing, not decreasing. Northern Hemisphere snow cover is at a record high for the date right now. In fact, I spent a good part of the morning shoveling our driveway here in Wyoming. And it's not just the area covered by snow that's increased, the amount of snow has also increased to near record highs. The Geologic Society of America says that ongoing rise in global sea level is evidence of global warming. But every real geologist knows that sea level's been rising for the past 20,000 years, and during most of that time it was rising much faster than it is now. From 16,000 years ago to 7,000 years ago, sea level rose about 120 meters or 400 feet. The tide gauge at Lower Manhattan shows that sea level is rising at about the same rate now as it was when Abraham Lincoln was president. And tide gauges from all over the world show the same thing. There's no indication that sea level rise rates have accelerated. NASA satellites show that over the past few decades, Earth has become greener because of the increase in carbon dioxide. NASA calls this carbon dioxide fertilization. The greatest expansion of life on Earth occurred 540 million years ago when corals and shellfish appeared in the ocean. Atmospheric carbon dioxide levels were 15 times higher than they are now. I keep hearing all these claims about ocean acidification, but Earth's history shows us that it's something that just won't happen. Corals and shellfish thrive in high levels of carbon dioxide. A lot of our coal beds were deposited during the Carboniferous era when life thrived and carbon dioxide levels were much higher. The deposition of this coal sequestered a lot of carbon and led to lower CO2 levels like we have now. When we burn coal, we're restoring CO2 back to what it was like when life thrived on Earth during the Carboniferous era. This claim from the Washington Post is patently absurd. There's no historical or scientific basis to what they're claiming. This graph from Ryan Maui shows global major hurricane frequency back to 1980. The frequency of major hurricanes around the world has sharply declined over the last 30 years. Global tropical cyclone accumulated energy has also sharply declined over the last 30 years. Tropical storms have not increased, but hurricanes have decreased over the last 30 years. This means that on average, tropical storms are weaker now than they were 30 years ago. Over the last 50 years, strong to violent tornadoes in the United States have sharply declined in frequency. Tornado deaths per million people are down by a factor of more than 10 over the last century. The Geologic Society of America says that sea ice is decreasing and it's evidence of climate change. But there's more sea ice now than there was 15 years ago when Al Gore won the Nobel Prize and predicted an ice-free Arctic by the year 2014 at the awards ceremony.
Another new study to be presented by U.S. Navy researchers later this week warns it could happen in as little as 7 years. 7 years from now. In the last few months, it has been harder and harder to misinterpret the signs that our world is spinning out of kilter.
Forest fire burn acreage in the United States is down 80% over the last 90 years. The National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration shows that the frequency of hot days in the United States is sharply down since the 1930s. 8 of the 25 deadliest Atlantic hurricanes occurred around the time of the Revolutionary War, including the deadliest in 1780, which killed more than 20,000 people. These hurricanes played a key part in the Revolutionary War because they sank a lot of British ships. 3 of the 5 deadliest floods in world history occurred in China during the 1930s, including one in 1931, which killed between 500,000 and 4 million people. The human condition has gotten much better over the last century, and this is largely due to the availability of low-cost fuels. Because of the availability of low-cost fuels, we can keep our houses warm in the winter and keep our houses cool in the summer. But climate alarmists want to take these fuels away from us, which will cause a massive human disaster if they succeed. As Franklin Roosevelt said during the Dust Bowl years of the 1930s, we have nothing to fear but fear itself. Toto's been pulling back the curtain on these dangerous fearmongers for the past 14 years. You can visit him, Kyrie Caesar, Toki and Upla on the web at realclimatescience.com.